Hmm. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here with me for today's presentation, Building Motivation. My name is Priscilla Andrews. I'm the clinical director here at the Cancer Wellness Center, so I oversee our clinical programming and our clinical staff. Also work with people through our counseling program and do some educational programming like this. I have kind of a few, let's say, major interest areas or pet projects, if you will. Um, and one of them is around behavior change, in particular motivation, and the process by which we implement changes in our life, especially when the change that we're wanting to make is around something that is a habit or a part of our routine, maybe even a part of our habit and routine that we're not even aware of the pattern that we've fallen into until we realize that we want something to be different in our life. So I'm really excited to be here with you guys. I will say, if you're here, you've got some motivation because you registered and then you followed through with the registration. Because I can speak for myself, I don't always follow through with the Zoom webinars that I register for. So I think already kind of thinking about the fact of like, what does that say about your motivation level? That already exists that got you here to spend an hour with me this week and hopefully an hour with me next week. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just getting things set up here. Great. So apologies while I just get everything all ready. Okay, there we go. Um, so you all probably are coming in here with your own objectives of what you're hoping to take away from being here. But I will let you know what's on the agenda for this week that's going to create a foundation that we're then going to build upon next week. So for this week, what I'm hoping is that everybody's going to leave with a better understanding about the process by which we make changes. And it really is a process rather than an on-off switch. We'll also have a discussion via chat, and I have some polls as well, where I'm really hoping that'll give you guys an opportunity to share some information, some thoughts with me, but also with the rest of the people watching the program. All of that will be anonymous. So hopefully that will make more of you comfortable to share some of your thoughts. And then also wanting to talk about, how do we build upon the motivation that we already have? How do we heighten it to help give us the drive to achieve what it is that we're trying to achieve? Now, you guys are here, I'm going to assume, because there is some type of positive change that you want to make in your life. Um, and as we're going through today and next week's program, to really be thinking about as we start, what is it that you're wanting to be different? And there's different ways that we can phrase that to ourselves, right? Maybe you're wishing something could happen, you're hopeful about something, you may want something to happen. Some of you may be more concrete, right? That you have a plan or you have that commitment internally to making a change, even if you haven't taken steps to implement it. Or maybe you've also identified the goal and you're just trying to figure out, like, how do I get over whatever speed bump I'm encountering that is slowing down my progress. So I mentioned that I want to spend some time up front talking about how we change. And as I mentioned, it's not an on-off switch. So we can experience it in some ways like an on-off switch, right? One day I'm not working out, the next day I am. One day I'm not being very mindful about how many fruits and vegetables I'm eating. The next day I am, right? And you'll notice that when I give examples, I often turn to healthy lifestyle changes because that tends to be what people come in after a cancer diagnosis, often wanting to change. There's lots of other behaviors that we may want to change, right? Maybe we're wanting to um, change some relationships in our life. We want to have more boundaries with the people in our life. Maybe what you're wanting to do is something related to stress reduction, whether it be reducing stressors or implementing more stress management techniques in your life. So I think this, even if I am talking about those healthy lifestyle behaviors when I'm giving examples, just know that that is sort of the low hanging fruit for me to use as a frame, as an example, as a concrete example. But certainly what I'm talking about can apply across the board when it comes to trying to change something in your life. So there is this concept that is pretty well established and accepted within the psychology community. And it is this concept of stages of change. And what the research has found is that making a change and then maintaining that behavior change, we actually go through different phases in order to reach the point where that change is being lived in our life. And you'll see here, there's some scores, points here. I will follow up with you guys with a self-assessment that you can take that go along with these points. But I'm hoping that after I describe these different stages of change, I'm going to give you a little poll to see which one you identify with the most. So the first stage of change is pre-contemplation. Pre-contemplation is that place where you don't see that there's anything to change, or it may be that you've tried to change something and you just say, forget it. It's never going to happen. I can't do it. A good example would be maybe somebody who is a tobacco user and they say, I've smoked for 50 years and nothing bad's happened to me yet, and I don't need to change anything. Or maybe that same tobacco user says, I tried quitting, it didn't work, it's never going to work, I don't have the willpower, I can't do it, right? But it's basically when you're at the phase where you don't see the need to do something different or the ability to do something different. And it's really categorized by what they call the 3 R's: reluctance, rebellion, resignation, or rationalization. Um, It'll be okay. It's not going to work. I don't have to change anything. I don't see that I need to do something different. I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption that the very back, by the nature that you guys are here, you are beyond the pre-contemplation phase, because what brought you here is I want something to be different and I'm trying to figure out how to make that happen. So maybe you're in the contemplation phase. So I'm thinking about making it a change. I think it could be good, but um, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not sure how to go around it. Well, if I make this change, am I going to be able to keep it up? Is it really worth it? Right. So you're already got some buy-in that something different could be beneficial for you. You're kind of on the fence. Um, you're in a state in contemplation, you're in a state of ambivalence. So you're straddling the line of seeing the pros and cons of both sides. You're seeing the pros and cons of continuing the status quo, and you're seeing the pros and cons of making a change. I will say, when you're in contemplation, you're probably more in touch with the pros of maintaining the status quo, have a sense of the pros of making a change, but are also acutely aware of the costs associated with making a change. Once you've evolved out of the contemplation phase, you move into preparation. Now, I will say some you'll see this chart, the stages of change chart. Some people group preparation and action together into the same stage, but I actually like teasing those apart. That's another framework of thinking about it, because sometimes before we're taking external action where we're implementing the actual behavior change, we're taking actions to prepare ourselves to implement that change. So in preparation, you're at a point where you're ready to make that commitment and take those first steps to making a change. You see the benefits of doing something different as outweighing the cons of making the change and outweighing the pros of staying the same, but you're sort of trying to figure out what you need to do to make those changes, right? Maybe you need more information. Maybe you need tangible resources, right? I want to start working out, but I need to go get some walking shoes. I want to eat healthier, but I'm not exactly sure where to start, and I need some information from an expert, and I need a new cookbook. Um, I want to try to set better boundaries with people in my life, and I'm not exactly sure how to communicate that to them, right? So preparation is this period of time where you're sort of figuring out how you're going to go about doing something, and resource gathering, whether those are things or people or information that you need in order to implement that change. And that's the action phase, right? The action phase is I have this increased motivation. I have been able to start taking steps to do the thing, to make things different in my life in an external way, right? I can point and say, here is the behavior that I am doing that reflects the change that I'm hoping to make. And it feels good. And that in that feeling good part can increase our motivation, right? We have a little bit of success and then we can build on it. And once we build on it for more and more time, then we enter the maintenance phase. And that's where the change is now starting to feel like a habit, right? The default setting is the new behavior versus what you were doing before, right? Um, and I'll give a personal example. I had been somebody who exercised a lot, and then got sick, had not exercised for a couple months. And just last week, I started exercising again, right? I'm in the action phase. Before that, I was sort of trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to fit this back in? Um, it's not quite feeling like I'm in the maintenance phase, but it is starting to feel like I'm getting in a groove. And even when I'm sort of reluctant to put my workout clothes on, I'm like, okay, just do it. So I'm sort of evolving into even being able to overcome some of my reluctance to keep at it. Now, you'll notice in that personal example I gave, I said I used to work out and then I didn't. And now I'm trying to get back to it. That used to work out and now I'm not. That's relapse. That's where we return to our old behavior before we made a change. And I really want to normalize that here, because it's really common for us to fall back into our old patterns of behavior. And what I really hope that you can take away from me highlighting that is a speed bump. It is not a wall to crash into. Because a lot of times when we return to the behavior we're trying to have change, we can have a sense of failure. I can't do this. It's too much. It's too big. I can't keep it up. We can get demoralized. And so just thinking about that relapse is really just this opportunity to step back and say, okay, can I get back in touch with why I wanted to make those changes? Can I get back in touch with why it felt good to have made those changes? It's sort of a time to really think about getting back up on the horse rather than feeling like you fell off the horse and the horse ran off into the woods. Now, the great thing about, oh, and you know what? Let me see. This is a great time. I'm going to launch one of my polls here. Um, and you'll see it pop up on your screen. It's anonymous. So, and let me go back one slide. So when you think about these stages of change, what I'm asking is, which one do you most identify with right now? And you could have maybe more than one goal in mind. So thinking about the primary goal, the primary thing you want to change that brought you here, relative to that, where do you see yourself falling? Like I said, I will also share a self-assessment that you can do that will help you identify if you're trying to figure out, well, I can't tell if I'm preparation or action or contemplation or preparation. Um, where do I fall? I'll share that afterwards as well. I see some more answers coming in, and I'm gonna go ahead. Great. I'm gonna end the poll and share it so you guys can see. Um, like I said, I'm a pretty good guesser. Nobody's in pre-contemplation because everybody's here for a reason. And we have one person here, wonderful, started making that change, is in action, maybe here hoping to see like, how do I keep that motivation to keep going? And understandably, some people here who have an idea of what they want to change and either want to figure out how to put a plan together or are trying to get themselves to the point that they are ready to put a plan together, to put a plan into action. What I will acknowledge here is I am not going to talk about that information gathering piece that can go along with preparation. Because there's probably a variety of goals that have brought people here. So I'm not going to talk about like, hey, here's the information that you need in order to eat healthier, or let me talk to you about exercise and physical activity and the things that you can do to be more physically active. What I'm really going to do here is offer a framework that's sort of like a plug and play, that you could use this framework regardless of the behavior change you're trying to make. Um, so, okay, so here's the great thing. Once we identify what stage of change that we're in, it can help direct us towards what can we do to build some momentum. And depending on what stage you're in, that's going to sort of, I don't want to say dictate, but is going to guide you towards some of the things that you can take on to build up your internal drive to be able to implement and maintain what it is that you want to have as part of your life. Because nobody identified with pre-contemplation, I'll leave that there for people to be able to see. I'll just say that it really is about when you're in pre-contemplation, you're really in a place of like, can you just start looking at why there would be a benefit to doing something different? Can you open yourself up to getting some information that might move you into contemplation, which is where you say, okay, it probably is a good idea for me to do something different. Now, there was about half of you that said I'm in contemplation, right? So how do I get from contemplation to preparation? How do I get myself to a point where I have buy-in about doing something different and feel more energized or more committed to making a change? One of the things that you can really do that is helpful is to draw up a pro and con. And that's a pro and con of both the change you want to make, but also a pro and con of your current behavior. Because if you're maintaining a current behavior, something about that is serving you, even if you see it as in some way problematic, or if you see it in some way as something that can be improved upon, there's something there that's working for you. And so if we can identify the pros of your current behavior, it can be really useful in figuring out what would be important to have be a part of whatever change you're going to make. An example I like to give is there was a gentleman that was in this program years ago, and what he really wanted to do was he wanted to eat healthier. And what he found he did was he ate a lot of convenience food, and didn't do a lot of home cooking, didn't, eat a lot of like whole grains and fruits and vegetables, right? You kind of go for the prepared food. Um, And when we started talking about his pro and con list for his current behavior, what he came up with is it's convenient. Going to the grocery store and pulling something off the shelf, going through the drive-through when he was late getting home at night, it was easy. So, okay, now we know that. We know that we need to reduce the friction around eating healthy and come up with ways that can feel efficient and um, accessible, because the convenience factor was really important to him. And that helped him start thinking for the preparation phase. Okay, like I need a cookbook about like 30-minute meals, and maybe I need to buy a crock pot, right? He started thinking, how can I help this fit into what is working for me now so that it can be more accessible to me and I will be more likely to maintain it rather than I don't know about you, but I've certainly had things where I do something for a week and then I fall off of it, right? I'm all gung ho about it. And then it's not taking into account what my lifestyle is, and then I can't maintain it. The other thing we can do in contemplation is spend 5 minutes a day. What is the changed behavior going to look like? How am I going to feel about it when I accomplish that? Right? Before I started working out again, I spent a lot of time thinking about and reminding myself like how good I felt after I worked out. I started thinking about, what it was going to be like to feel like I'd accomplished something rather than that internal struggle that I would have about like, I don't want to work out, but I want to work out, right? It really helps me move into that, okay, let's go, let's figure out like, when am I going to fit this back in? The other thing too is to not be quiet about the fact that you want to make a change, but to start talking to people about the change you want to make and to talk through with them, you know, this is what I'm seeing are why I currently do the thing I do now and what I'm feeling are the consequences, because that's really going to help highlight those pro cons, but also highlight like what is I don't want to say bad, but I'm going to say it. What's bad about what I'm doing now? What is not serving me with what I'm doing now? Talking to other people, I find oftentimes for myself, if I say something out loud, it's like it's out there in the world now and it makes it more real to me. So those are things you can do to move into that preparation phase. Preparation is I'm there. I want to do this. I'm in. I just am trying to figure out how. I'm trying to figure out what and when and where and what do I need. So if you're in preparation, discussing talking about a specific plan. What is it going to entail, right? If I'm going to start exercising again, like, okay, what type of exercise am I going to do? What time of day am I going to do it? How long am I going to do it for? When we meet next week, we're going to talk about goal setting and a strategy for outlining goals for yourself that can lead to a higher likelihood of success. That's the preparation phase. Um, Again, talking with the people in your life, talking to friends and family, asking for their help, asking maybe to have them be accountable to them, asking them to be your cheerleaders. Maybe sometimes it's talking about your plan and getting their input to see like, do they have any ideas about how you could go about doing something? Or maybe you have somebody like, say in my case for exercise, maybe I've got a friend who works out a lot or somebody that's a personal trainer and I can talk to them and get some information from them. It helps to externalize to other people what you are doing, because it also opens up the door like maybe there's somebody who's done the thing that you're trying to do and they can coach you, or maybe somebody in your life is trying to make the same type of change as you and now you've got a buddy to be with you along the way. Now, when you're in action and you're really trying to move into that maintenance phase where this is becoming a habit, this is where you really want to amplify the success that you have. You want to be tracking your progress, you wanting to identify rewards for yourself. Um, talking to yourself in a positive way. I find most people talk to themselves in a way that they would never tolerate an adult talking to a child in their life. Just generally much harsher on ourselves. If that is something you identify with, you know, working towards how can I be kinder and gentler and more compassionate to myself and highlight for myself the things that I am doing to try to work in the direction that I want to go in. Um, the other thing too is we're going to run into speed bumps. Okay. There's gonna be, I work out at night, right? There's that night where I get home late from work, or I've got a meeting in the evening, or my daughter needs something from me and I'm not on track. What am I going to do? Am I going to shorten my workout? Am I going to do something different that evening? Am I going to give myself, maybe I'm going to say, hey, tonight's not going to be the night and I'm not going to beat myself up over it, right? To work through even ahead of time, what am I going to do when I get sidetracked a little bit? I think another example is like, hey, I'm trying to reduce my sugar intake and eat healthier, and I know that birthday party is coming up. What do I want to do? Am I going to have a bite of cake? Am I going to make sure that I have a different snack with me that I can have, that I can join people in the social activity of eating while feeling good about what I'm eating? Am I going to just say, like, hey, this is one of my days where I'm not going to eat no sugar, so it's okay for me to have a piece of cake. Thinking through these things is actually helps you to be more successful because you are prepared. People who get into the maintenance phase, it's not that they don't run into speed bumps. They just have more experience and more options of how to address those speed bumps. As I mentioned in preparation, the idea of talking with family and friends, here too in action is there somebody in your life that can either be a role model or a buddy to you, that you can turn to for support, that understands and is encouraging and appreciative of what you're trying to do and can be there to give you that attaboy, attagirl that maybe you need, or that guidance that you need, or that help problem solving that you may need, so that you keep on the path that you're wanting to go down. I want to pause before I move to the next slide to see if there's any questions coming in, or pause to give people a chance to think if they have any questions that they want to ask. Okay. So I'm going to launch another poll. It's a typing answer, so hopefully you're on a device where hopefully you could pause to type. There's not going to be a lot of words on my next couple slides here because I really am wanting you to think about, how would you describe motivation? Right? What what does that word mean to you? I am gonna So as you guys are filling this in, um, when we're implementing change, there's basically three components we have to sort of consider. We need willpower, right? We need that gas in our tank to keep us going. We need way power. How am I going to get there? Do I have a map that is going to guide me to where I want to go? And am I clear about the direction that I'm hoping to go in? Do I know where my destination is? And if you think about these three components, you may identify, I haven't done short answers before, so I've got to see what it's going to look like. So bear with me here, guys. There we go. Okay. So here's the thing with these implementing change, right? Willpower plus way power equals us being able to accomplish our goals. If any one of these three things is challenged, that can be a speed bump to you making the change you want. So it may be that you have a pretty clear picture of what you need to do, what steps you need to take to implement the change, but maybe you just don't feel motivated. Maybe you have a lot of motivation, but you just don't know where to start. You don't know what to do. You're not sure what steps to take. Maybe you feel motivated, but then you get overwhelmed because you don't know how to break down what you want to do into edible chunks, if you will. And sometimes actually, like we have a sense of motivation and we have a sense of what we could do, but like we're not exactly clear about what it is we're trying to accomplish. Um, and that can be problematic too. Or sometimes maybe the goal is like too big, right? If the goal is I want to be healthier, what does that mean? That could mean lots of things. That could mean stress reduction. That could mean eating healthier. That could mean quitting smoking or reducing alcohol intake. That could be exercise. That could be improving your relationships with people. And there's so many ways to interpret what it means to have a healthy lifestyle. So that's another thing area where maybe what the goal that you have in mind is just so broad that you're not ever able to feel like you're making any progress towards accomplishing that goal. Now, the thing that is worth noting is that this willpower and way power to reach our goals also translates into hope, right? The psychological definition of hope is having willpower and way power to reach our goals. So people who have that special sauce of those three things coming together exhibit high levels of psychological hope, of a sense of the things that I have in my control, I can act on them. I feel good about the idea that I can take effective action to point me in the direction that I want to go. So motivation is that proverbial gas in the tank. And I want to take a moment here. I talked about having a role model for the goals that you are wanting to work. And sometimes we can even have a role model for just the idea of somebody we admire because of their motivation level. And being motivated, having hope, being hopeful about making change is not about a smooth path with no obstacles. It really is about having a sense of inner resources and strategies that you can use in order to overcome those obstacles and make it over those speed bumps that slow you down. So I like to share these three stories of people that I think of. They're well-known people that had to overcome obstacles, but still remained motivated to accomplish their goals. So I got three stories here. So the first one, as a child, this chart-topping icon lost her mother when she was only 5 years old. After dropping out of college to pursue a career in dance, she moved to New York City, where she was held up, attacked, and had her apartment broken into. So lots of things came up. This material girl worked and lost a variety of odd jobs to pay her rent, including a job at Dunkin' Donuts that she was fired from for accidentally squirting a customer with a jelly donut. And this all happened before she recorded her self-titled debut album, which included hits like Lucky Star, Borderline, and Holiday. If you are anywhere close in age to Gen X, you probably recognize this story. That's Madonna. So here's another story. This American entrepreneur and illustrator was fired by a newspaper editor because, quote, he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. After that, he started a number of businesses that didn't last too long and ended up with bankruptcy and failure. He kept plugging along, however, and eventually found success as a pioneer in the American animation industry. And my guess is, I think that the castle is a pretty iconic image for Disney. And then finally, this media mogul faced a hard road to get to that position. As a girl, she endured a rough and often abusive childhood. Early in her career, she faced numerous career setbacks, including being fired from her job as a television reporter because she was, quote, unfit for TV. After working as an evening news anchor, she transferred to a daytime slot, and her show boosted a third-rate local talk show in Chicago to the top spot and was expanded to a 1-hour format. Um, and you might recognize that from her magazine cover, but that was Oprah Winfrey. So, you think about people like this that have perseverance, that have a high degree of perseverance. You can also think about people in your life, or maybe even times in your life where you were able to overcome obstacles and stay motivated to stay on or get back on the path that you want to be on. So thinking about, are there people that I can look to either as a mental role model or a literal role model of somebody I can talk to that can help me with my motivation level and help me with my perseverance as I try to make some changes. So people were so lovely to share some of their ideas about what motivation is, and I want to share them here. So one person said that motivation is something that helps encourage you to make change. Another person, is this not going to let me? This is a new function for me. Somebody else said it gives momentum to action and effort. Oh, Lordy, this is not showing up right. I'm so sorry. Well, I'm going to just read them off then. Um, Another one, I love this word. I use this word too, stick-to-itiveness, right? I'm going to stick to it. Even when the going gets tough, I stay on track. Motivation is the desire to do something. And somebody else said the inner drive telling you to do something. So, that idea that I hear that's coming through is there's something about motivation that comes from within that pushes us forward, that causes us to keep going or causes us to get started. So the definition, the dictionary definition, is motivation is a conscious or unconscious drive inciting action, behavior, or goal. So we can think about motivation as the inspiration, the enthusiasm, this force within us, having the will to work towards something. Motivation allows us to feel the sense of incentive to continue on with what it is that we're trying to do. Now, I want to launch another poll. Now, the challenge is that there are things that can build motivation, and there are things that can hurt motivation. So, to take a moment, looking at this short answer here, to think about what are some things that motivate you. What if you think about a time when you were working on a goal and you were able to do it. You were able to accomplish what you set out to do. Maybe you made a change, maybe that you implemented that was something that you're still doing now. Maybe it was accomplishing a more time-limited goal. You saw something through to the end. What are the things that motivate you, that have motivated you in situations like that? So I'm going to give people a few moments here. And I will apologize because I thought I was being fancy adding these boxes that I could type right into my PowerPoint presentation, but they are not working the way that I thought they would. So appreciate people's patience while I realize these tech issues. So as people are writing in, I think what motivates us, we could think about that falling into kind of broadly one of two categories. We can have things that intrinsically motivate us, and we can have things that extrinsically motivate us, right? Is it something from within us that is telling us to do or move or change or keep at something? Is it something that we view as important for ourselves? Or maybe it's like it could also be like I feel better, right? It's something lived inside of you. We can also have extrinsic motivators, right? I come to work every day and I love my job, but the paycheck helps, right? And money can be a motivator. Um, praise from other people can be a motivator. Um, fear of some sort of punishment or negative evaluation can be a motivator. What I see some people, I'm going to end the poll here to see what people have to say. I think as I'm waiting for that to load, something to think about is when you're thinking about what motivates you, did you find, as I described that intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, did you identify things that mainly came from other people? I don't want to disappoint that person. Um, I'm afraid the doctor's going to yell at me if I go and I tell them that I'm not exercising, they're going to get mad at me. Or did you find that it was things that were self-driven, um, things that you valued yourself, and so you wanted to translate that into a behavior or an action to reflect that value? Extrinsic motivators are helpful. I said earlier, talking to your friends and family, finding somebody who can be a cheerleader, right? Those are powerful things that can build our motivation. It is also powerful to get in touch with intrinsic motivators, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But some things that people mentioned that were motivating for them is somebody said, my kids motivated me while I was putting them through school and working hard. It sounds like somebody went through a period of life where seeing their kids' ability to get an education, to maybe succeed in those academic environments, motivated them to do some work hard, and do something on their own in favor of their kids, right? Sounds like your children are really, really important to you, right? And that's an interesting one because there's both an intrinsic and an extrinsic motivator in that, right? The intrinsic motivator is my family is really important to me and my kids are really important to me. And there was an extrinsic motivator that was seeing your kids accomplish that goal of getting through school. Um, and both of the thing that's nice about extrinsic motivators is sometimes it is a way for us to get a positive feedback loop started because we're seeing the the effect of our change. And when we see the effect of our change, that can feed back in and bolster our motivation, right? There's nothing more demoralizing that, and we'll talk about that more in a moment, more demoralizing than trying to do something and not being successful. And there's nothing that doesn't feel good better than like to keep you going than to feel like, oh, like, wow, I could not bend over and touch my toes, and now I can bend over and touch my toes. Um, Somebody else said envisioning positive results, right? It's that piece of just spending some time, and if you're in that pre-contemplation or that contemplation or preparation phase, spending some time thinking about those positive end results, right? That definitely helps build some gas in the tank. Connection. So I'm going to make an interpretation around that, but like when I think about connecting with other people, what I'm doing, helping me feel connected to them, that can certainly keep me going. I will say, personal example, I love the people I work with, both the participants I work with, but I love my colleagues. And that is a huge motivator for me to do what I do. Keeping focused on the goal desired, it does help to break it down into smaller steps. Yes, yes, and yes. Exactly. Can I focus on what it is I want to do? And am I breaking down how I'm getting there into small enough pieces that I can actually see that I'm making progress? Because if the goal is too big, then you're not getting any of that positive feedback to see that what you're trying to do is actually getting you somewhere. Love that. Love that. Um, at work, it was the reward of money or promotion or compliment, right? Those extrinsic motivators, those are powerful. When I lost better, I felt better, clothes fit better. That's another great example of like there's sort of an extrinsic, intrinsic, right? Intrinsic, I feel better about myself. There's also a little extrinsic of like, ooh, like those jeans I could fit into again, or I look really good in this outfit now. Um, when I'm on time for an appointment, less stress. Yeah. So sometimes the the positive motivator is the taking away of something negative, right? The the I feel less stress is actually a positive thing, even if it's I'm pulling away something rather than adding it on. um, Feeling good to move forward, right? It's helpful to feel like you're making progress. And that's why when we talk about goal setting next week is how do you set yourself up so that you can see that progress? Progress keeps you going. I mean, if you feel like you're stalled out, what's the point? If you feel like you're spinning your wheels, it's very easy to just say, forget it. Um, Somebody said refusing to give up. So that idea of when I'm motivated, I just keep going. Yeah. A strong work ethic. So sometimes we have a value that keeps us motivated. Being somebody who's willing to put in the work can connect deeply with maybe something we learned from our family or something that we view as important. Visualizing the achieving the goal, support from loved ones and family. So, I perhaps as I read those, I might have read yours. Maybe as you read some from the other people in the room today, you could identify with those as well. What's helpful is when you know what motivates you, how do you focus on that? Because there's going to be lots of things that hurt hurt motivation. And I have some examples here of what people have shared in the past that hurts motivation. So sometimes our emotional state hurts our motivation. Maybe we're feeling anxious, or maybe we have a depressed mood. Those certainly can cause us to feel like we're spinning our wheels or feel like we can't even get off the couch to start doing, not having a direction. What is it I'm trying to do? How am I even, I know where I want to go. I don't even know how to get started. I don't know how to get there. That idea that was reflected in what can be motivated, the opposite of that can be demotivating, which is I'm overwhelmed by what I'm trying to do. I hear that a lot when people are trying to make healthy lifestyle changes, is it just all feels so big and so much. And so it's really important to think about like what your starting point is. If you're somebody, for instance, as an example, if somebody is trying to eat healthier and they already eat a clean diet, right? They eat a lot of homemade foods, and what they're trying to do is go vegetarian or maybe even go vegan. Okay, that's sort of within range. If somebody comes and says, hey, right now, I eat at McDonald's like 3 times a week. I eat a lot of frozen meals. There's a lot of me just like eating on the go. I've got to keep, granola bars in my car because I don't always actually stop for lunch, right? Going from that to being vegan, we're going to have to break that up into smaller parts. It doesn't mean that we need to let go of the ultimate goal of wanting to maybe only eat plant-based, but it does mean it's going to benefit from having that broken down so that even if you're not eating vegan, you can still see, oh, wait, last week I ate at McDonald's 3 weeks, and this week I ate at McDonald's once. Can I keep the ball rolling on that? Failure, right? That can be very demotivating, not feeling well. I mean, I think one of the challenges too is when you're either dealing with a cancer diagnosis or you're in that post-treatment phase, it can sometimes feel like two steps forward, one step back. You're feeling good one day, the next day you feel drained of energy. Maybe you go back to working out and you work out too much or too long, and then you're exhausted or you have pain or your neuropathy flares up, right? So it can be challenging to manage both the side effects and the demands that come with treatment and recovery from treatment. And be able to think about what is achievable now? What is it that I can do? How can I break this down smaller so that I can feel a sense of accomplishment and not just always feel like I'm trying to push a rock up the hill and it keeps rolling down. When somebody comes to me and says, like sometimes when I'm working with somebody, we'll talk about like, hey, let's try doing what do you think you could do before we meet next? Okay, well, I'm going to try to do progressive muscle relaxation twice a week before we see each other. Great. Okay. So we come back in and I say, okay, well, how did it go? And they're like, oh, I did it once over the last 2 weeks. Okay, great. All that tells me is that that goal was too big. It wasn't an edible bite. And we just need to figure out what an edible bite is for you so that you can start having some success. I think another thing too that I want to just acknowledge here too is, sometimes we have people that are close to us, they're in our inner circle, and they don't want us to change. They don't want us to change because us changing maybe would force them to change in some way. They like the status quo. They don't want us to change because they tend to be or they maybe it's not that they don't want us to change, but they tend to be critical and be more people that are going to highlight the things you didn't do or the things that went wrong or the things that are going to get in your way. I mean, maybe that's a good person to talk to if you're trying to identify potential speed bumps. Probably not the person that you're going to go to try to cheerlead you when you really need somebody to celebrate what you're trying to accomplish and the steps you're taking to do so. So, we sort of talked about these along the way. What can you do to build motivation? Spend some time visualizing it. Think about your success. Share what that would be. You know, Allow yourself to be in what it will feel like when the thing you want to be doing is happening. Every day, talk about it with somebody, whether it's saying, I want to do this, talking to somebody to say, what do you think I could do? Hey, this is a plan that I'm having. Letting somebody know, hey, this is what I accomplished, right? Before I started working out again, I was talking to my husband for a while. I was like, you know what? I think it's time. I'm ready. I'm going to get back on the elliptical. Hey, I think I'm going to go and I'm going to work out in the evening instead of in the morning. I think that's going to work out. That was all part of my preparation phase before I started working out, right? I had to talk through my plan. I needed to say it out loud and have somebody else hear me say it. Focus on your resources. What are your strengths? What are the things that have gotten you able to do difficult things in the past? What are the resources as far as people that you have in your life that you can turn to? And again, think about roadblocks. Take those into account. If you say, I'm going to start working out 5 days a week and I'm going to work out before I go to work, and you've got to be at work at 8 a.m. and you're not a morning person, okay, are there roadblocks there? Is working out 5 days a week in the morning, is that realistic? What might you run into? Is it going to be hard for you to get up in the morning? Do you have other responsibilities in the morning that sometimes makes it hard to squeeze that in, right? These are all things that are going to help you to be more successful, and having some small successes is one of the best ways to build your motivation to keep going. I see we're running in the last minute here, so I'm going to give you a little preview of something we're going to talk a lot more in depth about the next time we meet. And that is thinking about goals, but not just goals, but value-centered goals. Values are not goals. Values tell us the direction when we want to go in, but they don't tell us the destination, right? A value might be, I might value traveling east, but I can have lots of destinations. So people in this room probably have overlapping and different values in their life, but there's probably overlapping values that people have. But how we live that, how that translates into action, how we operationalize it, right? Operationalize is we're going to take a concept and we're going to have there be something concrete we can point to and say, see, I value humor. And so I'm constantly telling jokes with my husband, right? The telling jokes is a concrete example of something that's important to me, which is a sense of humor. And we can see here, and I'm going through this last part quickly because we're going to talk about this next week, but I kind of want to leave you with this to think about. We've got these domains that values can fall into: intimate relationships, parenting, family, work, friendships, personal growth, recreation, spirituality, community, physical well-being, right? All of these are different areas in our life that we can have things that are important to us. And the more we can start thinking about what values we have in those domains, then we can take those values and we can translate them and connect them to the things we want to do. So if I want to be a stable presence for my children, that may be a big motivator for me to work on my stress level. If I want to enjoy time with my partner, if that's something I really value, maybe that's going to cause me to find more opportunity to share laughter with my spouse. Maybe that's going to be a motivator to have time away from the kids, for instance. I value taking care of my body. And so maybe that's going to translate to eating healthier. I value balance and joy. And so I'm going to be more physically active because when I'm more physically active, I feel that sense of balance and joy, right? So we're connecting something that is deeply felt as important to us, and we're figuring out how can we connect it to the thing that we want to do. Because a lot of times what I hear a lot is the people come in and they say, well, my doctor said I should, and I've had cancer, so that should motivate me, but I'm not motivated. And all I say is like, okay, that's just not the thing that's going to motivate you. So let's find out what is. Let's find out what is important to you. And can we make a connection between that thing that is important to you and this goal or this change that you have in mind? So before I take my PowerPoint off and we stop recording so we can have a little conversation if people want to stick around, here's the key takeaways, okay? We can build motivation if we focus on the things that motivate us, right? If you think about the things that you shared with the group about what motivates you, and maybe you think about some of the things that some of your peers shared in here, how can you focus on that rather than the thing that depletes your motivation? We can be aware of what hurts our motivation so we can figure out how do we plan around that, right? If I've got that critical person in my life, they're not going to be the person that I'm going to go to talk about the change I want to make. I'm going to probably try to find somebody else to talk to, for instance. The main thing that I'm going to leave you with is to start thinking about what is important to you. What is important to you in your life? And can that be connected to the thing that you're trying and wanting to make different? Because the more you can connect something that is important to you in your soul, in your spirit, in your mind, the more motivation you're going to have to work towards a goal. So I'm going to stop share here. And I want to thank everybody for your patience with some of my tech stuff here. I can appreciate maybe not everybody can stay for the Q&A, but did want to give a few minutes here to open it up. I think we'll stop recording so that you can come off mute or come off camera or come on camera if there's any comments or follow-up questions that you would like to talk through before.